Hi there, my name is Kay Moon, and I'm a twin flame channel and Western astrologer. And this is a video with a twin flame, twin soul, divine connection update for 2020. This is the third of these installments that I've done for 2020. I have never done like kind of updates in the collective energies as much as I've had to do this year because the energy is just, it's so shifting. Last year was just a very different year. And so this year, as the energy shifted and messages started to come through, my guides really prompted me, okay, share this, make sure they understand that this and this and this is happening and this is what they're seeing. So, if you've been following along, you will recall that the most recent installment of these updates was here on my channel. It was about 2 months ago. It was the 2020 Union Energy Update 2 11 Signs of Union Coming. And you can find that on the videos on the channel. And then prior to that, the one that kicked us off was this one. And that was, I guess, back in March, at the beginning of March. And it was about the pre-union path, which is really what 2020 has been for a lot of twins. Whether you're in union of some sort of 3D physical romantic marriage type now, or you are on your way to something like that, or something, whether it's with your divine counterpart or with somebody else. This particular energy of this year has been about what does it take to get to deeper union with another via having deepest union with self first. And I really mapped a lot of that out here with the channeled message that came in back in March. And it was really based upon the information that my guides were showing me about the way 2020 was going to go at the start of the year, with the divine feminine here and the divine masculine here being in signs that were 90 degrees apart from one another, facing directions that were opposite one another, really. And so, the guidance that came in was to help prepare everyone to understand, what does this mean? Why is it working this way? How does it serve your own purpose in your own connection? And how is this also of service to the collective? So that the parts of us that are, going, oh no, we have this challenge that we're facing that's keeping us from being as close as we'd like to be. Again, whether you're in some sort of 3D physical romantic union or something else, the challenges of this year were meant to really prepare us for something much deeper in the coming year and years. So this is the third update. I'm using the chart that I created for the new moon in Virgo to provide this update, as the messages really came in kind of hot and heavy as a collective recap and a collective, here's what has happened, here's where we are headed. And I'm going to do a lot more chart-based stuff because that was the prompting with this new moon, to do a lot more chart-based stuff and show you, so that you can map the timeline to your particular connection and what you saw in your connection this year, so that you can understand where things are headed. So feel free to take your time with this video, to pause it and then come back, or to look back at your journal entries, or your phone records and text records, because that'll really help you understand from a date and time perspective which planets were really in play at which times for you and what you saw, so that you can have a deeper relationship to the astrology for yourself and start to create self-mastery with it, so that you can then create self-transcendence with it. So the theme of this, that, after I kind of wrote it all out and took all the messages in, is this idea of transmuting pain into power. And that's kind of been the journey for both counterparts this year. I'm going to start with an update on what's kind of gone on and will happen next with the divine masculine first, and then we'll move into divine feminine energies. As we all know, we all have both. Take what applies to you, let the rest live for somebody else for whom it applies. Okay, so the first message that came in actually a few weeks ago was that a lot of what's happening with the divine masculine counterpart is happening below the surface. It's happening behind the scenes. It's happening inside and behind the veil of the cocoon. There have been a lot of significant changes that are happening inside that are not yet reflected fully on the outside. The reality, divine masculine energies, is that you're a different man than the man who walked into 2020. There was just no way for you not to be. There's been an awareness since the Scorpio full moon of 2019. I believe the video for that was called The Divine Masculine's Naked Truth. And you can go back and listen to that, because that was the end of the retrograde of Jupiter last year. Let me just find it for you here. There we go. Let's pop back into last year. And Taurus full moon, Aries full moon right here. There you go. This video right here was the beginning of the change. So that was 11 months ago. The Aries full moon was the divine masculine's full moon for 2019, Aries being the first masculine sign of the zodiac. Jupiter at that point had moved direct after having moved retrograde. And at that time, there were several pieces of information and truth that would have come in that it would have felt like a dawning of a bit of an information, like a sun starting to rise over the horizon, and you going, oh, my eyes are open now. And there would have been certain things that came to awareness at that time that you just couldn't unsee about yourself, about the people you were relating to, about what mattered to you, about where you stood in your life compared against where you'd like to be. There was just a lot of truth with that particular full moon. And since then, every step that we've taken since then has, in each month, it's been a little bit of like a vice, where the walls for many of you have been closing in, forcing us to face those facts about ourselves and about our lives, so that we could get to the point where our lives were a more direct manifestation of who we are, who we want to be, without all of our past, without all of our baggage, without all of the outdated commitments and agreements that no longer are relevant at this juncture. So 2020, with the divine masculine moving out of the sign of truth, wait, where's my annotation tool? Let me get that back. That sign was Sagittarius, divine masculine. It's a sign of truth and freedom. Notice it's the sign of higher ideals. The symbol for it is this arrow, right? The archer taking aim in a very clear and direct way. The divine masculine moved out of that sign after having spent a year there and moved into the sign of Capricorn, which is all about structure, discipline, tradition, focus. But on its way, the divine masculine had some meetups with some challenging energies and entities. The first one, which was at the tail end of last year, beginning of this year, would have been a meetup with the South Node. So the planet I read as divine masculine is Jupiter. It's that red one there. And the first entity and energy you would have met up with is the South Node, this blue one here. The South Node can function in a few different ways. In traditional astrology, some people call it karma. I read very different than most traditional astrologers. I also recognize the South Node and the North Node to be portal points where energies can kind of flow in and flow out. Calling points where our attention is called to deal with something. And they also can function as lesson points, things that we've already mastered, South Node, things that we're about to master, North Node. However, in the meetup with the South Node at this point in time, that would have been, let's go back, I'll show it to you. Let's go back to January. Would have been at the middle of January of 2020, Divine Masculine meeting with South Node. This would have been a bit of the equivalent of a stripping down before the Divine Masculine met up with Pluto and Saturn for the remainder of this year and got some hard squares from Mars. What stripping down means, and what I noticed for a lot of the people that I read for, is that that particular moment in time, I don't know if you've ever seen the Hollywood Marvel comic movie Black Panther, but there is a scene where the son of the king is about to ascend to the throne because his father has died. And in the ritual and ceremony where the son of the king is about to move from prince into being a king, what happens is all the tribes from all the lands are gathered to witness the prince take a stand in service and protection of all of the tribes. Now, the reason the king is known as the Black Panther is because the spirit and the energy of the panther is given unto the king as a way of helping to better serve, protect, provide for, and lead his people. But in this ritual, the power of the panther is stripped. The superpowers of the panther are stripped back from the prince and from the king, so that anyone from any tribe who would like to challenge the king for his rightful place by inheritance can say, hey, I want to challenge you. I'm going to make a better king. Let's duel over it. Let's fight over it for the throne. And so in this ritual, you get the stripping of the power of the panther so that the prince is now a mere mortal. He is just like all the other mere mortals. And what you would have found in January would have been some very sobering experiences and realities that would have reminded you of your mortality, would have reminded you that just because you have lived in a state of privilege as a divine masculine energy, that doesn't, you're not entitled to that. That's something that we work for. That's something that we create via our service and shadow work, and something that's maintained and paid for via our commitment to growth and sacrifice. So this was January, this kind of stripping of the power of the panther, this kind of reminder, yep, you're a mere mortal, just like the rest of us humans. And that was how Divine Masculine Energies started the year. There would have been some level of news, some level of information that reminded you of that, that would have come through work. It would have come through internally yourself, relationship, romantic or business, or family. That's where this particular information would have come from for you. Most likely work and money. Work, money, and business. Okay, so that would have been the first kind of wrench in the works around where it is the growth is going to be for this year. And that would have been the beginning of the announcement to all of our divine masculine energies. Okay, If you want it, prove it. Show it to me. That's been the theme of 2020. So moving forward, that would have been the equivalent of the divine masculine being in the arena solo without his superpowers, just with what it is he's got. So then moving forward, we had the beginning of the divine masculine retrograde. Let me just get the date for that going here. Because the divine masculine does go retrograde every single year. Not all planets do, but he does. And the retrograde period of time is a period of time where normally the light, hope, optimism, and faith that Jupiter brings to the astrological table turns inward. Instead of us having that outward sense of hope on the outside, we have to source the light from within during the retrograde period. However, this year would have been very, very different. This was a very different retrograde year than any of the other years. And that is because there were 3 meetups with the Lord of the Underworld for the divine masculine that coincided with some of this retrograde period. So the first meetup was April 15th. So again, you may want to check your journal entries or look back at your life for April, what happened. You'll see here divine masculine and Pluto coming to conjunction at that late stage of Capricorn. And that period of time was a bit more of a shock kind of energy, that meetup with Pluto. That's not something that happens every year. That's much more rare. Okay, the second one would have been June 30th. So let's go over to that date. Think about what happened at the end of June, what energies came in at the beginning of July. On the 30th of June, we had the second meetup again at that 24th degree of Capricorn. So what happens when Pluto and Jupiter meet up? What goes on there? Pluto, being the outer planet, has more of the influence on how the situation goes. What does Pluto govern? What does Pluto rule? Well, it rules fears, debt, death, taxes. It also rules inheritance, sexuality, but also secrets and covert energy, things happening behind the scene. So this would have been a time where, as divine masculine energy, you would have felt that there's some sort of breakdown, because what Pluto does is break things down. It governs the death, afterlife, and rebirth process. Notice there are 3 steps to that. And then there are 3 meetups of Jupiter with Pluto this year. The third and final meetup of Jupiter with Pluto has not happened yet, but it's coming. This one goes down at November 12th. So let's pop over there. Okay, and now we see, Jupiter and Pluto here at 22 degrees of Capricorn. Okay, so think about what happened mid-April, what happened end of June, because there will be some level of echo around that coming forward in November for final completion, final conclusion. Did you get the memo, learn the lesson, integrate, because you're about to get ready to move forward. The good news is, if you've made it this far, you'll definitely ace the final meetup with Pluto. You'll ace the test. But this has not been easy. Not been easy at all. I want to just take a moment to say to all divine masculines listening, I really applaud and salute your tenacity. Because of the ways that this has not been easy, it could have been the kind of year where you really gave up on yourself, where you gave up on your dreams, where you gave up on a lot of things. But instead of doing that, what I'm actually seeing are a lot of divine masculines trudging forward the best way they know how. Bruised, bloodied, battered, taking hit after hit, and yet and still saying, I still stand. I'm still willing to keep moving. And so I just want to congratulate and applaud you. Uh, the challenge of this year is unparalleled. We haven't seen some of these kinds of energies in many hundreds of years here on planet Earth. So if you took incarnation at this time, trust that it was no accident. Thankfully, the retrograde period for the divine masculine energy is over. We just came out of that. Let's go back to now. We just came out of it. The retrograde period where you would have felt that kind of heavier energy, harder to find hope and faith on the outside, was May 14th through September 13th. Finally, it is done. And so there is a light at the end of a tunnel. But for those of you who are listening, you still may not be saying very much, even though a whole lot is changing. There's still a lot of facing of self, facing of choices, facing of consequences going on of the choices that we've historically made in the past. Because this year, there have been none of the usual distractions available. Pluto has seen to that, so has the father of integrity here, Saturn. And so Saturn kind of leading the pack in this Capricornian meetup has been going about the business of clearing away anything that is a codependency and a distraction or a coping mechanism that would keep us from doing the work, capital T, capital W, this year. During the retrograde and through the meetup with Saturn, that's going to happen at the end of the year, closer to solstice in December. This has been an extraordinarily sobering time. And it's been a time of really doing what you can proactively, but also a time of not being in fantasy about what you can't do. So many of you, I have heard in my sessions, many of you have had to, speak to your divine counterpart and, let them know, like, look, I can't do this with you right now. It's just not realistic given everything that's being stripped from my life and the level of construction that I'm under at this point in time. It's not that I don't love you. There's just no bandwidth for you. And I don't say that in a unloving way. I'm telling you this in a loving way because you deserve everything you're asking for. And simultaneously, I am aware the state of my life means I can't give it to you in the way that you want it. Being a man of honor, I am choosing to make sure that I don't take up space that I can't pay for with what I contribute. I'm going to step out of trying to take up space that I can't contribute to with you. So some of you are really seeing that. Others of you are seeing that your counterpart is saying to you, the mess that my life is, that my eyes are now open to, I don't have a way at this moment to clean it up. Not to worry. The opportunities to clean it up are coming, but this is your moment to get clear about what mess that is. Where are the entanglements? Where are the commitments? Where are the structures that are keeping you enslaved and bound to a you that you are no longer, to a you that has died a long time ago, and enslaved and trapped and committed to a future that you no longer even want for yourself. This is the time in which it's appropriate to continue to cultivate the clarity about that and do what you can to get to the place of releasing the structures that don't work. That was the whole point of this Pluto-Saturn meetup in the sign of structure. Saturn is saying, hey, I'm going to show you what's out of integrity. Pluto is saying, hey, I'm going to break it so it can't be refixed. And Jupiter has been kind of getting dragged this whole time with the two of them kind of walking through the structures of our lives and going, oh, this is where you were out of alignment with what's real and what's true for you. Yep, let me just point that out for you real quick. So it's a bit like that. Because Capricorn, where they're all sitting, is an earth sign, the whole journey this year has been about reshaping our physical world and coming to terms with the consequences of those previous choices, shedding manifestations that we've outgrown, and also about confronting emotional wounds from our family template, and more specifically from mother figures in our life. And I'm not trying to throw mother figures under the bus. I'm just being honest about what's here. The energy here is facing off with the energy of the sign that governs mothers, and that's Cancer here. So any wounding that took place um, through the matrilineal line, through your relationship with your mom, any templating that you got, this has been the year where all of that's needing and being asked to break up, to complete. So for the divine feminines taking this in and wondering, oh, that's why he's been this way, I guess, all year. This is what he's going through. Or the divine feminines listening and going, wow, yeah, this actually really resonates for me in my life, even though I'm not, I don't identify as divine masculine counterpart. Even for the twins in union who are listening and going, yep, I'm both energies solidly, but this is really resonating. You may want to re-listen to the Divine Masculines 2020 through 2024 journey. That particular video really laid out a channeled message that came out last November. It was a channeled message about the journey the divine masculine energy is taking toward coming into greater union with self. And so you can find that here. Where are you? Here. Looks like this, Divine Masculine 2020 through 2024. Realization to reality, big moves, bold steps. The implementation process is underway. So, yes. And so for the divine feminines who, are wanting some sort of 3D world romantic physical union with your counterpart, and you've kind of been, diligently doing your work and really wanting to see how that can come into fruition in a more solidified way than it's been in the past. The other message that came through for you to pay attention to, and this came through actually a little more than a month ago. Sometimes I wait and collect the messages and then I put them all out. It was the idea that it's important to understand that men have an idea of romance too, like a picture of how they want a relationship to get underway, a picture in their heart and in their mind about, the kind of gentleman they'd like to be with you, the kind of circumstances they'd like to have going on in their life before they, can woo a woman, court a woman, partner with a woman, be there, support, and have the back of a woman. They have an idea of what that looks like too. And, as ride or die as you are, like, I don't care what your life looks like. I just want to be by your side. I don't care. As much as that's romantic to you, that may not actually be in alignment with their picture. And so it's really important to respect and honor that they too have a picture of romance. It's not just always about your picture, that they too have a picture of what a coming together or a falling in love could be like. And it's not always about you. And to just respect their process with it. And that whole parts of that were really covered in that 2020 to 2024 journey for divine masculine. So definitely have a re-listen to that, because it's just important to remember that like if you're watching a person who just got out of a car wreck stagger away from their car, with injuries and wounds and really not even able to be upright, you wouldn't expect that person to send you flowers and take you on a date and show up at your house every night and call you daily. Like they just like, so why it's an equivalent metaphor for what 2020 is, a bit of a car wreck for all of us. So, just if you've been hanging in there for some sort of 3D world romantic union and you're just waiting and wondering like, when is it going to happen? 2020, as I mentioned back in March, is a pre-union year as opposed to a union year. So just hang in there, kiddos. Keep doing your own work and, allow your counterpart to be where they are at. Okay. So back to talking to divine masculine energies. The bottom line is that this whole year has been about deconstructing in order to reconstruct better later. And so parts of ourselves that got sold off in order to have something quote unquote normal or to build a legacy that we were supposed to build, not what's actually aligned for who we are. These parts have been breaking through and forcing us to deal with them and what they need. A confrontation and duel between the parts of us that we deemed acceptable and the parts that we deemed unacceptable are what's kind of going on here. The life and acceptable parts of the life that the acceptable parts of us built that are under fire from this Pluto, Jupiter, Saturn conjunction here. And now, as we're in the late part of the year, they're getting a heavy duty triggering from this Mars energy up here. This energy has been about the marriage you're in. Are you married in a way that's aligned with who you really are, the acceptable part of you? What is the part of you that is supposedly, I use this in air quotes, unacceptable? What does he want? The career you've got. Are you just doing the career that the acceptable part of you should be doing? What about the part of you that got locked away in order to make money? What does that part of you want? Are you, consistently and congruently working on, your influence and your cultivation of connection and in some ways fame in this world? If you're really working on the building of that, there's a lot of ways that we can lock away the unacceptable part of ourselves in order to be what we think other people need. The unacceptable parts of you are breaking through and are saying, hey, is this fame cage really what we want? Is the cost really worth continuing to pay? The same thing goes for businesses that we've built, for projects that we've been a part of, for homes that we've invested in financially and in terms of our, effort and toil and building, literally building the home. Are these things aligned with all the parts of us, or only the unacceptable, or so only the acceptable parts? This year, the unacceptable parts are demanding their seat at the bargaining table, and we're just not able to ignore them anymore. All of this is under reevaluation. Much of those structures that the acceptable parts of us built without the buy-in and permission of the unacceptable parts of us, most of those parts of our lives are crumbling. So since Jupiter went direct very recently, the direct movement of the divine masculine energy here is about taking what we've learned by witnessing that conflict between us and ourselves, and putting ourselves together around the new truths that we've been shown. So that beginning stage 11 months ago with the naked truth that was dawning, that truth is like in our face now. It's like, woo, burning our eyes. It's so bright. This isn't going to be an easy path. It's also not going to be a straight line. So if you've been thinking, well, first I'll do this, and then I'll do that, and then I'll do this, like I'll save up all this money, then I'll quit my day job, then I'll start my business, then I'll have all this runway before I actually build the business to, figure out how to make money in it. And then, dun, da, 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 I will ride in on my white horse to seek the wife of my dreams, for example. That is a fantasy that is probably not real. It's a nice idea, but the process is likely to be a lot more nonlinear than that. And the good news is that from this point forward, now that Jupiter is direct, it does start to get a lot easier from here, as long as we're taking what we learned to rebuild a new path. The more we are clinging to the old things and the old ways and the old structures and doing our best to pretzel ourselves into maintaining them, the harder this is going to be, the bigger the hit by the 2x4 in 2021 when Jupiter changes signs into the sign of Aquarius, which governs chaos. It governs transformation, revolution. It governs evolution, rapid leaps forward, quantum leaps. You want to let go of it now is what I'm trying to tell you. If you know it needs to go, now's the time to shut it down, because the old doors are really closing, and what's been shown to be lost may be able to come back, but not in the old way with the exact same structure. They could come back in a new way. So if you've got a business that you loved and you've been trying to hold it together this year, but the writing's been on the wall since last year, hey, it's time for you to let this go. You just feel unprepared to let it go. Part of why the vice feels like it's tightening around you this year is because it may not be what you think is time to let go, but it is the time the universe has decided for you it's time to let go. Because once we get into the sign of quantum leaps, there's going to be a whole new opportunity available for you, but you can't still be holding on to the old stuff if you want to be able to take something else up with those hands. You got to let go now. So that's a bit of where the divine masculine's been this year. Like I said, there's just been enough kind of woo going on for a lot of the counterparts that I've spoken to feel withdrawn, to feel like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to explain what's going on. Oh my gosh, this just is all really intense. Connection to your counterpart, if you're in some level of 3D physical connection, it may be intermittent or sporadic if you're not living together and in some sort of union already. If you are in union, you may have found that, you and your counterpart had a lot of plans for this year that kept getting derailed, rewritten. Then the rewritten plan got derailed only for you to rewrite a new one. And then the new plan would get derailed yet again. Much of what I have seen for twins in union is that they have been stationed in places and with people as light beacons for the good of the people around them that they're meant to serve. And so you may have had plans, oh, I was going to move, or oh, we were going to, start this new arm of our business, or oh, we were going to, write this book or do these retreats, or we were going to, fill in the blank with what you two wanted to do. This year for the two of you has kind of had the two of you kind of on pause while the collective around you reorganized. And then you could get new marching orders closer toward the end of the year, probably in the now time through the December time, about where you're going to go, where you need to be. New information is going to start to open up for you about how to direct your path forward. That will be very different than what you thought you were going to start with. Things are definitely shape-shifting in that way. So hang in there. The new information is coming. So that's the piece about the divine masculine up to this point. Let's just show you where we land when we get to solstice. So on solstice, we have meetup of the divine masculine and Saturn, father of integrity, time, and order. At 0 degrees of Aquarius, and this is the beginning of a new era and a new chapter, brand new beginnings once we hit solstice. And it is also the beginning of a harmonious window opening up between divine masculine counterpart and divine feminine counterpart. So what I love about this is that when you start in this new place, divine masculine, you're there from a very sober, very realistic, very grounded, here's what I can do, here's what I can't do kind of place. There's a cautious optimism about this new beginning that hits us in December. And I like that because what we have been through in the past with Jupiter through Sagittarius was a period of time of a bit of over optimism when Jupiter was at home, a bit of a kind of, well, I can do anything. No, you can do the things that are aligned with you for you to do. And this is what 2020 has really shown us. It's like, here's the parameters, here's the bars. If you want it, prove it, get aligned, strip down, stay focused. And this cautious optimism that starts us off when we get to solstice is the beginning of a new chapter and a new era for you. So almost there. Last meetup with Pluto, like I said, is going to be November 12th. And then you got a much smoother ride coming for you, but it's already starting to get easier now that your energy is moving direct in the sky. Let's talk about the divine feminine, shall we? She's been on an entirely different journey this year. Entirely different. Even for my twins whom I read for, who are in some sort of physical 3D world union, like the things that they have been dealing with are so different. They may be supporting one another, but it's like one is writing a book, the other one's building a house. It's like two very different things. One's mom got sick and they have to go care for her. The other one is I don't know, dealing with issues with their children from their ex, and they're like now having to be in two different places at the same time. So it's been a bit of a year like that. The divine feminine's journey for 2020 actually really began last year in November. And so let's just go, and many of you reported last year in November, that's when a lot of things shifted in your connection. You felt something move and something go in a different way. And let me just get to a different date so that those aren't so right on top of each other. There we go. All right, so here's the divine feminine. Last November, she stepped right into Libra, the sign she's been stationed in for about 11 months. And there she is. This is the sign that's having her focus on balance within herself and within all of her relationships, because Libra is the sign of balance. It's also the sign of relationships and partnerships. But look what she's facing. She's facing the sign of the self. So where does balance need to get created? In herself first. Where she's overgiven this year, she's been focused on giving to herself. Where she's under communicated, now she's focused on hearing her own self clearly so she can communicate effectively and precisely with those whom she loves. Where her relationships are showing her that she's been out of balance with herself, she's now creating the balance her life needs so that the next chapter can unfold in higher alignment with who she really is, who she's always been. So as she retrograded through Libra, because there was a retrograde period, and during that retrograde period, I'll give you the dates for that, because I did hear a lot of you say, oh my God, I can't feel my connection during the retrograde period. It was like the connection went dark. And you started to feel a bit of a internal vibration and disenchantment, disillusionment with the journey for those of you whom are in separation during that period of time. The retrograde period, which was February 8th through May 26th. So February was a time when I did hear a lot of people tell me there's been a shift in my connection. So at that February time point, those who were in union, that was a period of time when like the divine feminine may have gotten some news that certain things were going to take her attention off the connection and force her to put it on herself this year. It could have been news about family, it could have been news about kids, it could have been news about an ex who you co-parent with, but it also very well just could have been news, about yourself, your own health and well-being, things you need to work on, maybe some of your own debt, or things that you need to sort through. So during this period of time, 7 things happened astrologically that made this quite a bit of a gauntlet run for the divine feminine. Let me go ahead and pull out the dates. There were 3 squares to the divine masculine. Now, squares in astrology represent tension. They're aspects of tension. They are aspects of energies that don't flow harmoniously. They're energies where we are moving at 90-degree angles towards an intersection. And if we're running at it fast, we're going to have a collision. It's like, whoop, surprise, crash. The first one was actually last year, and just before she moved into Libra, here she is at 19 degrees Virgo. Here he is at 19 degrees Sagittarius. Some of you felt the shifts in the connection happen as early as last October. The next square between the two didn't come again until March 2nd. March was another period of time where, because the divine feminine went retrograde in February, March 2nd of 2020, this would have been a period of time where there would have been another moment of feeling like there was a wrench in the works of the connection. Here she is at 19 degrees Libra. Here he is at 19 degrees Cap. So think about what was going on in your connection at the beginning of March. There could have been some tension there. The last one was August 14th. And so August 14, there we go. Similar degrees. Here she is at the 18th degree of Libra. Here he is at the 18th degree of Scorpio. Big changes at this time. Big changes. So the tension that, you felt that has been a bit of like, okay, what the heck is going on in this connection? And where do I stand in it? It's for good reason. He's been shifting and changing. You're shifting and changing in a big way too. And if you're curious about all this stuff, I am launching Star School 101, which is astrology basics, and then 201, which is twin flame astrology. I'm launching both of them in the next couple of weeks. So if you want to be able to break this stuff down and track this stuff for yourself, I highly recommend signing up for Star School when it launches. As long as you're subscribed to this channel, I'll be able to share with you when it launches. All right, so that was the first thing, these squares with Jupiter. This was an energy of being on two very different pages. By June of 2020, divine masculine and divine feminine were actually about as far apart as they were going to get from each other this year, and as on different of pages as they could possibly be this year. So if June of this year was a little wonky in your connection, that's why. The energies in the sky had the two of you really needing to put your attention in very different places. Okay. The second thing that happened this year that really, okay, there's May through June, that really would have put the divine feminine kind of like in her own, calling her attention back to herself in a really big way. May through June, let's go back to, we'll go back to mid-May. There we go. Here she is. Divine Feminine is here at about 6 degrees with the Shaman's asteroid, but she's directly opposite Chiron. And as there's an opposition to Chiron, what can happen in the opposition energy is a bit of a confronting of wounds that are kind of coming at you from below. Like all your baggage, all your issues in May and June would have really shown up, and all of your coping mechanisms for it as well. So, what do you do when you're disenchanted in your connection? What is the connection showing you that you do? Do you inveigle someone else to help you distract yourself from what's going on in your connection? Do you busy yourself with a project and check out? Do you, go knock on your counterpart's door and demand that they work it out with you right this minute and force yourself into their space? This period of time, May and June, would have really revealed to you, okay, this is who I am when I am triggered. This is what I do. This is where I go. These are my coping mechanisms. It wouldn't have been until July or August that we could really start to make out, what the triggers were. So now we're in September, you probably have a bit of hindsight about this stuff because you can look back and you can see, oh, that's right. May and June, that's when I did go on that eating binge or that drinking binge or that smoking pot binge or that work binge or, that gambling binge, whatever your, coping mechanism is. For some people, it's binging on certain things. For other things, it's like self-restriction. It's like the anorexic kind of like, I will stop breathing until I can figure this out energy. And even that's a type of binging. Whatever your coping mechanism is for when you're wounded in connection, because Aries is self, Chiron is wounds, Libra, where she sits, is partnerships, connections. Whenever you feel triggered and wounded in connection, May and June would have shown you, this is what I still have left to work on. Got it. And at this point, you now have that information so that you can take effective action around it. The third thing that happened while she was sitting in Libra was a square to all of the Capricorn energies, not just the divine masculine. So if we look at this as a compendium, as a group, let's just clear this. Let's go ahead and come back to the natal. For this time period, here she is. She's been hanging out in the sign of Libra, making an aspect of tension to all of this energy in the Capricorn. And egads, it's tough. That energy is tough for her. Because this energy that was same energy that was, a breakdown and reconstruction for the divine masculine brought the same kind of tension to her life as well. The same kind of issues he's been dealing with, which is why, because it's a square, which is why so much of what was said for the divine masculine probably resonates for so many divine feminines, because it was aspecting her as well. For a lot of divine feminines, this Capricorn energy has asked you guys to make changes to your home and how you are at home in the world, because the Cancer energy is right there, and that's about homes, families, motherhood. Changes to your physical body, your physical vehicle, the home that you're in as your home in the world. So the changes that you've been asked to make to your health and well-being, to being at home in your physical body, all of that was on schedule this year so that you can hold a greater quotient of light and love come 2021 than the quotient you've already held. You're being prepared. Your vessel is being cleaned out and detoxed. You are being shown, here's the shadow, heal it, integrate it. This is what the year was for, and this is what was meant back in March when we talked about 2020 being a year of pre-union energy. More light and love is coming in, but if we're still embroiled in all of our shadow behaviors, all of our old triggers and wounds, not going to be able to hold it. It'll flow through us, but we won't be able to maintain it. The fourth thing that happened, and this was kind of what kicked off the entire cycle for her, there were 2 meetups with the Shaman's asteroid. So let's go back to November 21st, 2019. There it is. They're sitting right on top of each other at 6 degrees Libra. November 21st, 2019, and May 18th, 2020. So that's a good 6-7 months of Shaman's asteroid energy being in the divine feminine's field. What's the Shaman's asteroid? The Shaman's asteroid tells us of the story, Make tells us of the story of, an elite initiate being selected by a tribal leader to go on a very long journey, to go grab the first egg of the season. You had to jump off a cliff, swim across to another island, climb up a tree with a special headdress on, grab the egg, bring it back intact, and the first one back presented the egg to the tribal elders. And so it's the energy of going on a very long journey to bring back wisdom for the tribe, to bring back fertility for the tribe. And this November to May, that's what the divine feminine's been doing. She talked to the Shaman's asteroid November, retrograded back, spoke to him again in May. And it's been his energy, Make's energy, that's been imbuing and informing what the divine feminine is going through. So this has made this quite a bit of very, if I could describe it, it's been like a 6 months in the temple, like 6 months of a year of cultivation of wisdom from your journey so that you can prepare yourself to share what you gained with the tribe. And that's not the last thing that happened. That's only thing number 4. Thing number 5 that happened, I seem to have skipped the order here, so it's only 5 and then 6. There we go. Is that retrograde that we spoke about. So she did turn retrograde. I'm going to give you the dates because I definitely noticed there were a lot of divine feminines who were like, yeah, I can't feel my connection. I don't even know if I want it anymore. What am I doing in this connection? We're just facing a lot of challenges, and I am struggling with them. February 8th through May 26th, where your energy had to turn inward, and that coincides with a lot of that Shaman's asteroid energy. And there, because the feminine energy and the connection, even if you're in union, when the feminine energy turns inward, needs to turn toward itself, there is necessarily a change in the connection. Ay, ay, ay. The change in the connection, because what the divine feminine provides to the connection is a level of, emotional depth, emotional life. She's like the life blood and the heart and the pumping soul of this connection. And when she turns inward, it's a little bit like the lights go out in the connection. And that's okay. Sometimes it's appropriate for, the counterpart to source their light from within themselves. There's no accident that there was overlap here in these two retrogrades between the counterparts. Sourcing light from within is part of the name of the game. And then she went direct with all of that knowledge and all of that wisdom in June. Now, the gift of that was that many divine feminines came out of that period two guns blazing. They were like, okay, great. Yep, I know what I want to do. I want to serve in this way, contribute in that way. I want to build this. I'm going to do the following things. I need to take care of myself like this. And that was awesome. If that was you, fantastic. If it wasn't you, if you still felt a little lethargic and a little like, what am I doing? Not to worry. This next moment, because there's a steady build to this, is probably your time. And so we've got a meetup now with the creation goddess. So hooray for meetup with the creation goddess Haumea. Here she is, Gaia Haumea, right there. At the 26th degree of Libra, again, sign of partnership and balance. This is manifestation energy at its finest for divine feminines. So we had this period from June to now where she was running through, okay, I see this about myself, got it. I got this shadow energy, gonna work on it, we'll integrate it. I got this breakdown in my life, okay, gonna fix it, gonna shed some stuff. Oh, I'm triggered about these things. Check, noted. And the creation goddess meetup here is imbuing all of the feminine energies with the capacity to put into action all that's been percolating this year in our relationships and in our life. There is a tricky energy here because she is opposite to the Mars Lilith Eris conjunction up there. So one of the things that's actually kind of good about it is one of the challenges around when divine feminine energy is distorted, when it is operating in shadow, is divine feminine, instead of being flexible, she's overly flexible. And so this energy of Mars, Lilith, and Eris sitting together are giving her a bit more of that inflexibility, some of the stubbornness around not being willing to back down on her core non-negotiables. So you may be feeling a bit of frustration. You may be in touch in a new way with your power, with your ambition, and with your drive, and issues around those things starting to get confronted here. There is an examination of divine feminine power to create balance in her own life, while also simultaneously giving up and surrendering victim stories as a way of choosing creatorship. You can't simultaneously be a powerful creator and be a victim at the same time. It doesn't work. So your power as a creatrix and surrendering old manipulative ways of creating and instead moving into goddess ways is some of what this process is going to be. And this isn't even fully over yet. Oh my gosh, what a year. We're only September. We still have more to go. This whole year, though, has been a real rumble with her power as she goes deeper to manifest things through the Scorpio process. So I talked about this in the Virgo new moon video, that Scorpio governs our shadow. It governs, the things that are happening in the transmutation alchemical process. The disowned parts of us get to come home and we get to start being whole, via the sign of Scorpio. And so she's going to move through Scorpio. You can see she's here at the 29th degree of Libra. She's about to move through Scorpio. She pops out and into Sagittarius at solstice. But this period of time inside the scorpionic cocoon gives her the opportunity to do a few different things. There's taking stock, there's recalibration, there's shedding parts of ourselves that no longer serve, there's coming home to congruence and honesty about who we really are. And I love that energy for the divine feminine, because it's just been a year of really starting to get clear about who you are and where you're at. One of the other things I'm loving about this too, for the twins in particular, is as she gets into Scorpio, Scorpio is in a sextile to Capricorn. These two energies work harmoniously together. And when she starts to move in here, you're going to start to see in the connections around you, in your own connection, that some of the challenge you've been facing with one another, some of the tension is off. Some of the challenge comes to completion. It gets a bit easier. He still has a few more tests and trials, and so does she, but the flow between the two is a lot easier. Let's just take a look at some of what's coming for her, because she's going to move at a much faster clip than he is. So if we get out here to there we go, October 10th. Now we've got her meeting up with Mercury. So there's going to be a lot more mental clarity here about some of the challenges and issues that have been there for you in the emotional realm and with the shadow, which will be very, very good. Then if we jump forward in time, let's go here to November. Yep. So about the 1st through the 8th, we've got, she conjuncts the sun, which brings even more illumination for her. And then Mercury goes retrograde in the area she was just transiting with the creation goddess. So if you've been trying to bring a project or a piece of your work to clarity and to creation, and you've not really been able to bring it into fruition, the clarity, the things start to click come that first week of November, thank goodness. Yes, and then we have Jupiter here, who's in range of meetup with Pluto. We know that's coming on the 12th at that point in time, but it's the final meetup, and so hooray! The end is nigh. And then we have, let's get to the end of the month of November, because November is when things really start to pop. So let's get out to the 30th. There we go. Now there is a full-on sextile between the twins. And there she is with Mercury leading the communication. She's right here at the 24th degree of Scorpio. He's right here at degree 26 of Capricorn, and well within orb of a lovely sextiling energy. She's more of the initiator because Mercury sits with her around the communication pieces. However, because she's sitting in Scorpio, it'll be important to gauge, how and what you do communicate. Because Scorpio can have an intensity to it in its communication, which, depending upon where the other person's at, they may or may not be ready to receive. And so you want to just gauge it so that you're communicating at the time at which they can also receive it and stay connected. Okay. One of the things I'm also seeing here from the perspective of the divine masculine is that while he may let you in at this point a little bit more about the challenges he's faced this year, and you may let him in a little bit more, it's not a full on, and now we tell each other everything and ride off into the sunset and everything's perfect. It's not that. Sextiles take work to get the benefit of. They're not like a trine where the energy just flows harmoniously. And they're not a square where it's inharmonious, but both people have to be putting their oars in the water and rowing in order for something good to come out of it. Yeah, so what I love about this, though, is that this sextile keeps up all the way through the end of January. It's like they keep pace and harmonious energy from the end of November all the way through the end of January. So it's all of December, all of January. There's flowing energy for communication between them. There's flowing energy for revealing and being transparent between them. There's flowing energy for rebuilding together between them. And if you're in union, this would be the period of time where the two of you kind of come together and you're like, okay, now that we know what 2020 has been, let's go back to the drawing board together one last time and decide what we want to do next based on what we now know. You can make the decision, and the decision can actually last. It can stick, it can flourish after this point. So there is relief for everyone coming, which I really love to see. So they get into, I mentioned this earlier, I guess solstice, let's just pull that date up. They both get into harmonious frequency with one another on solstice. Here she is bringing the love. Venus is with her. Here he is with, cautious optimism, sobered expansion. That's, more grounded expansion there. And then they sit. This opens up a year-long window of harmonious energy between the two of them. And that the first piece of this, it's inside of this year-long window. There are pockets that are better in harmony and less harmonious. But the first leg of the most harmonious energies is with the two of them all the way through the end of March 2021. So there's a lot of wonderful things that can go on there. And then at the end of March 2021, my guides were showing me that will be another bifurcation point in the collective, another choice point in collective timelines. She's going to be anchored in the sign of truth and freedom, that's Sagittarius, and travel and faith. He's going to be anchored in the sign of new beginnings and evolution, that's Aquarius, the sign of revolution and change. A few things are going to happen, my guides told me to share with you. The first is that people who want to be in some kind of 3D physical world romantic union with their divine counterpart, a window will open up for you to do so. However, that window is not without its challenges or effort. This is not, okay, now the stars rip off your roof, drag you both out of your houses or your marriages if you happen to be in one with somebody else, shoves you into the castle and locks you in and says, now live happily ever after. No. The sextile energy is the energy where we have to do the work in order to get the benefits. The good things don't happen to us. They happen when we do our work to get it. And so if you've been working towards this and your counterpart's been working toward this and you've figured out how to maintain communication and stay connected despite some of the challenges you face, and even though it's been a little bit back and forth, you're still working on, okay, well, how do we maintain being together? And okay, if you're going to get out of that marriage, how can I support you in this process? It's that kind of energy. If none of that's been going on, it's not realistic to expect that this is probably your union window. The universe doesn't always, it doesn't necessarily skip steps. You got to still talk to one another in order to date one another, in order to take the next steps after that and progress in the relationship. Um, there won't just be a knock on your door magically where the universe says, hey, it is time for your union, pack your bags. Okay. So if you're not in communication, find the way that's appropriate for you to open that door. If you need to offer an apology, apologize. If you need to, take that initiative, take the initiative. The cost and price of connection is and always has been pride. So if you want it, you're going to have to pay the price and let the pride go so that the connection can live. Stop letting pride choke it. The second thing that's going to happen is my guide showed me that there's going to be a lot of clarification of whether it's time to allow your twin there to be where they're at and be in their process and love where they are. If they're married to somebody else and they have told you and they have shown you they are going to stay in that marriage, this period of time is going to be a clarification about, okay, maybe it's time for me to allow the love that I got from this connection to expand big enough to include other people who are available to love me and co-create with me. If that's your situation, you'll know it. I'm not saying that that's how it's going to go for everyone. I'm just saying that the clarity is going to come in right around solstice and then the couple of months after. Like, if this is what needs to happen for you, love your twin, honor their choice, and love yourself enough to also expand your love range to include someone who can be with you. Clarity for that will come in. People who have been dealing with ascension partners, this is the third thing. If you've been dealing with an ascension partner, also known as a false twin, clarity about that will come in during this period when she lands in the sign of truth and freedom and he lands in the sign of revolution, evolution, and change. That you'll get the clarity about what you're dealing with and who it is and what you need to do about it at that time. The reason why is because Sagittarius really lives for clarity and truth, and Aquarius really lives for doing what's best for the good of all involved. And these two are the most evolved of the air sign and fire sign groups. And so for those who've been really heart torn about what's right for them, whether it's a choice to stay in your marriage with your soulmate or not, or to continue to, just maintain a little bit more space for your twin if they're not available at this time. What's right for you is going to start to come forward. And this is the fourth thing. Not, it's the clarity about whether or not you stay, holding space for your twin or stay married to your soulmate isn't going to be about where your twin is at. The clarity is actually going to come from where you yourself are at with your personal experiences of the journey. And this is why this year has been such a pre-union year with so much of divine feminine energies in Libra, sign of partnership, facing off with sign of self. It's your internal feminine energy that's going to create that clarity for you when she pops out here in Sagittarius. She's going to create that clarity for you about who you are and what you need to do next. And your masculine energy will support you with whatever that choice is, because he'll pop into the sign of Aquarius at the same time she gets into the sign of truth and freedom. So look, the reality is I can't tell you what's right for you. Neither can the stars, nor can any other reader. One of the things that people really kind of miss when they read astrologically is, all the planets have a meaning, but people forget that Earth has a meaning too. This is the symbol for Earth right there. And Earth specifically was created as a realm of free will. We can't force others to do stuff. We can't even force them to honor their own soul contracts, despite how painful it is and how many consequences that we receive when we don't honor our soul contracts. The stars they can call the caterer, they can call the DJ, they can reserve the space, they can invite the guests, but if we or they decide not to show up for the party, then the stars aren't going to force people to do it. I don't believe that the stars are destiny. I do believe we can transcend our astrology, but it's by understanding how it works and understanding how we work individually that we get that opportunity to do so. So for you, for all of us, the call is to finish up our internal work this year because it's going to be the groundwork for that clarity that's coming in. And if you really want to kind of dig deeper, if this is kind of your first introduction to me and my work, or if you're kind of swimming in an overload of information, there's a couple things that I'd recommend you re-listen to or listen to for the first time if you haven't yet. And just listen. I'm going to show them to you, but I want you to go ahead and listen for what your heart is saying. Okay, I need that information. For those of you who are like, is it a twin? Is it a false twin? I don't know. Let's have a listen here to the Ascension Partner, the gift of the Ascension Partner and the Ascension Partner Q&A. There is a gift in connecting with someone who may have shown up and presented as a false twin, and there's a reason you would have met them. Have a listen to that. It'll help you clarify it. There is the channeled messages for Divine Masculine and Divine Feminine for the year. Those came out last year. The Divine Feminine one, the channeled message was Her Heart Leads the Way. And there's so much of that that gets anchored and clarified based on what I shared in this message. You'll hear more of that there. The Divine Masculine channeled message for 2020 through 2024. The realization to reality, big moves, bold steps. That'll help you understand some of where your counterpart has been and what he's been going through and what your own masculine energy has been going through. For those of you who have been in some sort of long-term, years and years, no communication with your twin, this interview, but you want love, you're really thinking, okay, I'm ready to start opening up to it. This interview with Catherine Woodward Thomas, she takes a very spiritual approach to uncoupling the energy there so that you can be free to expand the love you've got with your twin to include letting someone else love you so that you don't have to live a life alone. She talks about this in this interview. We were built to live with others for companionship. So take the time, take the opportunity to listen to this if you're called to it. Also, take the time to listen to this if you're hanging out in a relationship with a soulmate that's past its expiration date and you want to complete it. This is the interview for you. Have a listen to that. And the last thing is the container for this new chapter is the Sagittarius Gemini eclipse cycle here. 2020 through 2021, thoughts become things. I highly recommend having a listen to that because that'll help you understand why you're seeing a little bit of this kind of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 step forward, 1 step back. It'll help you understand that because this Sag Gemini eclipse cycle is going to work that way. And it's like a 2.5-year cycle. So I recommend listening to that When we're talking about the divine feminine, her heart leads the way, the channeled message from last year, here's that one again. Okay. This requires getting out of our heads and into our hearts. And the heart doesn't really know time. It doesn't know the past or worry about the future. So this whole year has been about unburdening the divine feminine's heart so she can come back to neutral point, 0 point, divine neutrality. And so that the changes that are coming, you have the capacity to be with. You can be with them without trying to make your future pay for your past mistakes and things that you didn't know or that they didn't know or didn't do or did do. It's important to not try to make the future pay for the past. It's also about being with the changes coming forward without trying to hold our present ransom because things didn't work out the way we thought that they should, could, or would have in the past. This energy has been about dropping story, dropping grudges, dropping fantasies, dropping judgments, healing wounds, especially with that meetup with the shaman's asteroid, and transmuting our pain into power. This has been what this whole year has been about. It's been significant work. This has also been about confronting truths that will set us free. This transit of the divine feminine energy through Scorpio will put a period on the process and show us where we've been unwilling to look. It is literally the last stone. You know that phrase, leave no stone unturned in your search? This is the last stone. It's the final confirmation and final union with self before collective unions with others' energies open up between the divine counterparts and in the collective union with our counterpart. All of that energy is coming. But this final step is the last step before it. More truths will come to light once the divine feminine gets into Sagittarius. But these truths will be about yourself, who you are, the cost and consequences of some of the choices that we've made. They'll also be about self-forgiveness and self-balancing, self-validation, self-realization, self-actualization. All of that by looking at the mirror and facing the truth. These kinds of connections, as you know, they don't lie. They show us the work that we've done. They show us the work we've not done. And they get reflected back to us as we move forward. So, what I will say to you in closing is that 2020 is a year that both told us and showed us that new growth cannot be achieved without destruction of the old first. That there are seasons to this. We do have to drop some of the old leaves in order to get new ones. This is the end of an era. It's the end of a cycle and season for twins. And much of it has been about stopping patterns of abdicating our power to our past, to our pain, to our parents, to the companies that provide us a paycheck. It's important to recognize that even to our separation, not to abdicate our power to separation and not get so comfortable in our separation that we mistake running for giving them space or mistake our wounds from our exes or from our past for some sort of intentional wrongdoing or harm creation on their part. It's just not that. Coming back home to that divine neutrality and that divine compassion is what this year has asked all of us to do. And the question really is, what do we have to heal? What left do we have to let go of? What left do we need to let go of in order to stay open to love? Thank you so much. I know this is a super long video, but I wanted to give you the chance to really track your journey by showing you the different dates, and then showing you what's coming so you could take a look for that. And also, I really wanted to anchor you in your own divine choice, because the stars, they don't force, they invite. So if you know what you want and you're doing your work, you can create it. Absolutely. It's about working in tandem with who you are instead of disowning who we are. Okay? Sending you a lot of love, a lot of light, and I will see you in the next video here on YouTube. Take great care and bye for now.